All right. We're back again. Wednesday night. Hopefully you guys are having a good week. You got to enjoy the long weekend, but now you're back at it. You're back at work and you're hustling hard, making sure you make it happen with the 4 days that you do have this week. Oh, man. Not a whole lot of crazy stuff going on in the market. We did have some big announcements today, though, that we'll go over at the beginning of this before we get into the questions. Stellar. They're going to be tokenizing. They've partnered with the DTCC, and they're going to be tokenizing stocks on Stellar's network, which I would assume would leverage, you guessed it, XLM. Saw a little pump on XLM today off of that announcement, about 2 cents on the move. I don't know if that'll be sustained or it'll come back down or what's going to happen with it. Looks like 2027, Q1 2027 is when they're going to be implementing tokenized stocks through the DTCC for XLM and Stellar's network. Very cool. Also got some news about Project Agora today. I don't know if you guys are familiar with that, but the BIS, they have 40 plus member banks that are going to leverage Project Agora for settlement between the different counterparties and the ability to be interoperable and work with one another. And, you know, they're going to have to leverage a certain network and a certain asset in order to be able to facilitate that at scale. There is nothing out there publicly that states that will be XRP, but they will be using one unified ledger, distributed ledger technology to do that. So you could speculate like me. I think that there's going to be one that kind of the cream will rise to the top, and you know, whatever's going to have the most liquidity and compliance. MasterCard got their BIT license today. Very big news. That allows them to be able to transact at scale and operate within New York. And that's kind of like the highest standard of compliance in the land, a BIT license. If you can meet that criteria, that's it's a high bar to reach. So now that they have that, they should be able to be, you know, compliant across all the U.S. states to be able to facilitate payments with blockchain. There with MasterCard, I'm sure Visa isn't far off the mark, and that they will probably follow quickly behind, as well as Amex and some of the other payment providers that are out there. So, or they will leverage somebody else that they can partner with that has a BIT license to be able to settle into New York, and that may be MasterCard. So symbolism there, you know, if you want to put your tinfoil hat on, the MasterCard symbol looks like two worlds colliding. I think maybe the digital and the traditional finance world, maybe that's the symbolism there. We'll have to see how that plays out. So between those three things, you know, lots of things, fundamentals in the market are at an all-time high. Sentiment still in the gutter. Price still moving down a little bit. I'm sure people are either they're excited to buy more or they're very tired of it at this point. And I understand both of those sentiments. We did see an uptick on Google Analytics, something I watch occasionally, but I saw some people post about it today, where how to buy crypto started to see an uptick. So hopefully that breathes some life back into digital asset space. At this point, I'm going to go ahead and go out on a limb and say this space is institutionally driven. At this point, you know, retail does not drive the price action. It is going to be institutions and the utilization of these networks moving forward that is going to move the price one direction or the other. And really that's been the case since the Bitcoin ETFs were launched. We've seen that through Bitcoin dominance. We haven't seen the rotation that we've seen in previous bull runs. It's only been assets that also have ETFs. Now we have seen a few alts pop, you know, 60 to 90% here in the recent market. That speaks to, you know, some rumblings that tend to happen early on in a bull market is there will be some tokens, some altcoins that jump in value in a very short period of time. And that tends to be kind of the start of when Bitcoin starts to see its run. So I'm hopeful, just like everybody else, that through the rest of the year, the market will turn around. We're going to see institutional adoption. I still think that we're going to see a significant consolidation with the reverse carry trade and all of that playing out. Also very interesting to see the interview with Kevin O'Leary, Mr. Wonderful, today. I don't know if you guys follow Shark Tank and all the stuff that he does with the watches and his other investments, but Kevin's been a character in crypto for a little while now, obviously invested in SBF and FTX and everything that went on there, and didn't do so great on that one. I think he was also in on Celsius and some of the others. But he's always diversified, never more than 20% of his total net worth in one sector, and never more than 5% in one single investment in a sector. So I'm sure that he's been well diversified, still has an allocation to some crypto, but he was saying in the interview was he doesn't think that they're going to tokenize the S&P or any of the sectors of the S&P on Ethereum. He believes that it's going to be another compliant blockchain, and he's doing a lot of research right now to figure out which one of the blockchains, layer ones, that's going to be. I think I know which one's going to settle the S&P. Now, tokenization, you've got Canton, you've got Ondo, you've got Securitize, you've got many other players in the market. Now, Stellar now with the DTCC on that side. Chainlink for the Oracle component to be able to, pass real world information on chain, price Oracle for all this stuff. There are some blockchains that have gained traction and announced partnerships and will be used at scale for all of this infrastructure as they tokenize the stock market and all the other financial products and asset classes over the coming years and the coming decade. And again, I think that those are likely going to be the ones where the most opportunity is. I'm not diversifying. Person asked, is XLM better? It's already up 2 cents today. If people have asked me my top 5 before, and I should probably give the disclaimer at this point. Nothing here is financial advice. You should always do your own research. I'm just one person out here trying to provide education, entertainment for people. If you need real financial advice, you should seek that out from a financial advisor. I'm not licensed. I do not state that I'm giving financial advice. I'm here to give my opinion on things. And if you want to use that in your calculations when you're talking with your advisor, cool. But I can't tell you what to do. You make your own decisions. And all the opinions I'm sharing are my opinions. They are not the opinions of Digital Ascension Group or any of our subsidiaries. So with that being said, again, it's going to be what I think the winners of the next cycle are going to be utility-driven networks. So real world infrastructure protocols that are going to be settling value or providing governance for things, or really the settlement of value is going to be, I think, the largest winners. XRP, XLM, HBAR, maybe Algorand over the long term as we see tokenization happen in third world countries. IOTA, as we see, the Internet of Value come online, and they need an oracle for that and public infrastructure. Hash, Avalanche, Solana's already seen a pretty significant move up with the meme coin culture, the NFTs that have been on that network, but that doesn't mean that it's not a good network. Definitely facilitates settlement, again, and I think that that'll be one of the settlement layers that's kind of the redundancy in case they can't route it through, one of the main layers that they use. Just because we've seen certain volume on that network, shut it down. I don't think that they want to push the edge of that, especially with it going down a few times in the past. And it's been great here recently. Hasn't had a whole lot of those issues like it used to. They've made some really significant strides in the network. But the XRPL has never been down. It's only ever been paused twice in its entire history. 14 years. The next time I'll be on here will be the day before XRP is 14 years old. Next Monday will be June 1st. June 2nd is XRP's 14th birthday. So in that whole time, the blockchain has only ever been paused twice. It does have digital identity, credentials, permission to X, permission domain. I think that they will get batch payments. It's got an AMM for routing liquidity on the network. It has a built-in DEX, and they're also going to be, instituting XLS 64, 65, and 66, which are pseudo accounts, borrow, lend, and liquidity pools, which will have oversight by a broker and have an arbiter in there, and you'll be able to borrow against tokenized assets directly on the XRPL through those liquidity pools. So all of that is coming. The loans themselves, I think, will take place on chain. A lot of the underwriting will still be off chain, and that's why you need Chainlink to be able to push that data into the smart contract. XRPL has oracles already built in. It can use other oracles. The XRPL itself is not an oracle, but it could use the Flare time series oracle for price feed. It could use Chainlink for enterprise applications. And that was one of the things that Kevin O'Leary said was, whatever blockchain they do choose is going to have a lot of compliance built in and the capability to function with smart contracts to be able to facilitate what's necessary for markets at scale. So that's, there's lots of reasons that I believe in XRP, and that's where my pennies are parked. But again, you get to make your own choices. I don't get to tell you what to do. Go do other research, listen to other people. And again, I'm just one guy on the internet. So I'm going to go ahead and start. I got one super chat before we jump into the other ones tonight. Again, appreciate you taking time out of your Wednesday to come hang out with me. If you could, like, subscribe, share, hype the video. If you're over there on YouTube, I don't know what that does, but I've seen the button on there when I'm scrolling through. So if you could, hype it up. We are close to 200,000 subscribers over there on YouTube. So if you're watching on X on YouTube and you're not subscribed, please do. On TikTok, and then I think we're on Facebook as well. Facebook may be having some issues. So, all right, off to the super chat. They say, hey, Jake, thanks for your inspiration. Canton Network and Lightspark. I've heard they're already being used to make global transfers with many banks. Can or will they have an effect on XRP? Please expound. Thank you. Appreciate you, John. Appreciate the super chat. I'm not even familiar with Lightspark at all. So I'm going to give that a Google real quick, real time. I give it to you guys real. If I'm not, if I don't know something, I'll just be transparent. Says products and APIs for moving money. So APIs are great, but that's not settlement. It allows for interoperability between different ecosystems. It says crypto or fiat. Who we serve. We've got creator platforms, on-demand platforms, social media platforms, marketplaces. So this is kind of like banking as a service is all it looks like. I don't see that they have a token themselves. I could be wrong about that, but that's not listed here on their website. Canton is more of a governance token. So, like I mentioned before, there will be some networks that are governance that you have to build in governance around stuff and how to manage things and who has access to what, at what time, how many parties have to sign for something. And Canton, the token there allows people access. They pay in the token to participate on that chain and in that ecosystem, similar to Quant. Back-end settlement at scale for the stock market, I don't believe could be facilitated by Canton. Now, they could tokenize stocks on Canton. You could trade stocks on Canton. You could do the same thing with Quant. It's, an overledger. But the asset itself doesn't facilitate settlement between the people participating there. It just allows them to, participate in that infrastructure, and they pay to do so in the token. That's what drives demand for it. And, if you're holding a certain amount of tokens, then you have some say-so in the governance of what's going on. So either one of those don't look like they compete directly with XRP. And like I was saying before, there's going to be multiple parties that are working together in concert. If you think about it, the internet is somewhere, like, it just depends on how many things you consider protocols, but it's really kind of 5 layers to the internet. And so I think that that's going to be similar to how this works out for this iteration of the internet. I think there'll be multiple protocols layered on top of one another in order to be able to facilitate everything that you need. And each one is going to have their own efficiencies, and they'll take up space and gain market share. And, there'll be other things that provide interoperability. You got Wormhole, you got Axelar, and then there's Chainlink with CCIP and a few others out there that are aggregators and allow for the issuance of assets from one chain to the other, either through burning and minting or locking and minting between the different counterparties' chains. And if you burn it on the counterparty chain, you could redeem the locked asset on the native chain. So anyway, there's a lot of stuff that goes on, very technical things. Most people aren't going to care about any of this at the end of the day. They're just going to care that their money settles real time with whoever their counterparty is, and it's easy to do. Digital identity is going to be a cool thing where you won't be able to have imposters. I'm looking forward to digital identity where nobody else can fish people or pretend to be somebody that they're not on social media or other platforms. You also won't have to enter your KYC data on like every single thing in order to be able to participate in different ecosystems. You'll just share a hash and they'll have access to whatever information they need to validate that for whatever period of time they need to keep it on record. All of this stuff is possible now. It's just getting the legacy players to adopt it and see the utility in it. And they're starting to. You're starting to see everybody come to the table here. I don't want to say their hands being forced, but the regulators finally providing guidance around this stuff is definitely starting to drive things here in the US and I think globally toward the tokenized future that we all want to see. Comes with gives, you give and take on this stuff. It'll all be transparent, watched, and visible, and probably going to give up some privacy as all this stuff happens. Zero knowledge proof is going to become imperative and very important. And I'm hopeful that with AI and everything else that's going on, including quantum, that we're able to navigate all the risks in this and set up the right guardrails and make sure that it's not abused like many people are scared of. So anyway, that was a long-winded way of saying, no, I don't think either one of those networks has any impact on XRP's adoption. All right. We've got Colin, my man. He says, hey, Jake, I've heard banks and institutions are using RLUSD rather than XRP coin. That's why the price won't be going up. Thoughts, please. Everybody asks this question in different ways, but I'll expound on it. So RLUSD is issued by Ripple. Anybody that is a Ripple partner might leverage RLUSD. RLUSD benefits Ripple. It does not benefit the counterparties. They don't earn interest on the treasuries that are being held. So in the future, they've also created this with Rail. Anybody can spin up their own stable coin and they can help facilitate, them issuing that on a network to then be able to have intra-bank settlement for themselves. And then they get to hold the treasuries, and Ripple clips a piece for making that easy to do and making it compliant and all the other fun stuff that they do with Rail and through their total stack product, which is called Ripple One. So RLUSD has kind of replaced Tether in their flows. In the past, they used Tether for on-demand liquidity to be able to settle between counterparties if they were both willing to accept Tether in that transaction. At scale, this doesn't work because if you have thousands of issued stable coins and you've got to park those stable coins with different counterparties that don't want to receive your stable coin, you still need a DEX that facilitates settlement and transfer of that value between the counterparties in whatever their respective currencies they want to send and receive are. So until there's enough liquidity in XRP to route payments that way cheaper and faster and more stably than RLUSD, I think you're going to continue to see payment flows go through that token. And if people are okay with the counterparty risk of Ripple, then yeah, sure, they'll continue to leverage that. And the other counterparty that's receiving that payment also needs to be okay with the counterparty risk of Ripple, which they've been very transparent. I think that they've set the standard in the industry for how to operate with a stable coin. And there's a lot of trust that's been built there for RLUSD. But in the future, if it's faster and cheaper and more liquid to settle through XRP and it's on the XRPL or even the EVM sidechain, they will route that liquidity and settlement through XRP versus RLUSD, or it might participate in a liquidity pool or an AMM. There's going to be a bunch of different ways, but all of those things still benefit XRP, whether it's an AMM or liquidity pool that locks up XRP, and there's less circulating supply. So the settlement that does move through XRP will require XRP to be a higher price. So all that being said, again, Ripple did not launch a competing product with XRP. It's kind of a 1 + 1 = 3. And most people really don't understand that. I put out a whole video on RLUSD versus XRP, or at least I shot it. I don't know if our team's got it up yet or not. But once that's out, you'll see my opinions and why it's actually a net benefit for XRP and the XRPL to have RLUSD as the first issued stablecoin on that network. And I do think that there'll be many, many more stablecoins issued on that network that will provide additional liquidity, and XRP will settle all of that. Steel City Flooring, they say, hey Jake, Carbon One River, awesome, glad to see you. They say, thoughts on how long after price appreciation it will take for businesses like Milo to accept XRP and hold and buy a house and not have to sell. Top 3% holders, 2 kids, and God willing, 2 more. Would love a house with acres. God bless you. So good question. We actually talked to them at Bitcoin Vegas. They will do XRP. I think that we may end up being their exclusive partner. That they do, cross collateralization of XRP and homes with. So we'll keep you updated on that. But very excited about the product that they brought to market with Bitcoin, ETH, and Sol. And I'm highly confident that they would be willing to do XRP, especially post price appreciation. Conservative asset class. They say, hey, Jake, I am excited for Patrick Bet David to invite you. If Patrick Bet David invites you, I'm glad you've been part of my life. We are getting there this year or next, 2-year running. Beyond Broke Mastermind, love you. Thank you. I appreciate the kind words and the support and being part of the community. If you want to be part of the community, if you think that'd be cool, you want, in real life events, financial education, business resources, private deals, all the other fun stuff that we do there in the group. We're starting to launch courses and other things for people to, go through. And I don't know if we'll do certifications or anything, but just give you kind of more ways to be able to learn and retain the information. A lot of what we do there is learn, do, teach. So the community is super helpful. Culture is awesome. If you are looking for people that are just a few steps ahead of you that can kind of help you up the ladder, we have a lot of that there in the mastermind. So close to 17,000 members. And thank you for being one of those. And thank you for the super chat and the support. Patrick Bet David. So I've watched Patrick, I don't know, maybe 7 or 8 years. I've been watching Patrick. And he had, valuetainment prior to me even finding him. Hormozy, I was one of Hormozy's first 3,000-4,000 followers on YouTube. Now he's millions of followers and launched multiple books. And at the time when he was launching content, I was like, dude, I don't know how you don't have 100,000 followers. It happened very quickly after I commented that on his video. But back to Patrick Bet David. A lot of what he does now is pretty controversial. I see the vision that he has. So he's trying to build out a whole media brand there in Florida after he's exited the insurance firm that he sold off, a few years ago for $400 or $500 million. Super successful. Like there's a lot of people that I have a lot of respect for in business. I don't necessarily agree with everything that they say. But I'm glad that there are people that are opinionated and come out and have conversations and debate. What I do like about Patrick is he doesn't belittle other people. He is matter of fact on things, which rubs some people the wrong way. But he's open to debate and new information, and he's willing to take that back and change his beliefs if it is something different than what he currently has a bias for. So yeah, I would love to. I'd love to be on the podcast, the PBD podcast over there. I'd definitely go to Florida for it. Shout out to Tyler Boone. If you guys don't know who Tyler is, Tyler's done a lot of different dog tags and different things for Valuetainment, XRP Vegas, and many other things. If you're looking for like memorabilia or metal stuff that's going to last a long time, I think he still does art plate too. Is this pre-recorded? No, it's not. Go check out his website. I think it's just T Boone over there on Twitter. I haven't ever talked about him on here before, and it's not sponsored or paid. I really like Tyler. I think he's good people and he does good work. So if you need, any type of like metal thing made that's at scale, he does a really good job of that. And he's got some technology that allows them to create NFTs against all of it. So you have it on the blockchain also. All right. Let's see here. We got Golden Hour Fishing, excuse me. He says, please explain the DTCC plus XLM partnership and how it does not harm our narrative. Thank you. God bless. I think I went over this in depth or in detail a little bit earlier, but I'll touch on it again. So just because settlement of the DTCC and tokenization of stocks are two separate things. You can have stocks tokenized on a bunch of different networks. The back-end settlement between the clearinghouses and the brokers is money transfer that's outside of, the shares themselves. So trading the shares, yeah, they may go through a DEX and settle, depending if it's on the XRPL, on Stellar. They're using Soraband smart contracts. I don't know that they have liquidity pools on Stellar or an AMM, but they can definitely issue tokenized assets on that network that they can claw back and create other capabilities for. So it makes a lot of sense that they would issue that on XLM. Same thing with Canton, same thing with Ondo, same thing with Securitize. You're going to continue to hear partnerships about people, or not people, but networks that are partnering with the exchanges. I'm sure that the Texas Stock Exchange this year in Q3 will announce who they're going to be tokenizing with. They can all have different providers that they're tokenizing with. The back-end settlement has to still be through one unified network, and the DTCC and Project Ion is what's going to do that. This person says Lobster Wallet has pools and AMMs. I don't know that I've ever said this publicly. This is just my opinion, okay? So this is not defaming anybody. This is not saying don't use it. And it's not saying that this is not just a one-off circumstance that took place. I had a client lose $30 million on Lobster Wallet. From what I understand, and maybe this has changed because I just wrote it off after that happened, there's no KYC, there's no KYB, there's no compliance built into that. So there's a lot of fraudulent stuff that gets listed on there, and many people take advantage of others. They thought that they bought XRP with that $30 million. It was not XRP. It was a synthetic asset issued on XLM, and they rugged them. And it cost them. They're a family office. They're okay. It's not like that was all of their money or anything, but still not a good experience. And so at that point, I kind of wrote Lobster off. There may be some legitimate things on there. They might turn that into the platform that they tokenize stocks on. I'm hesitant to believe that with as much malicious activity as I've seen on there. So, again, if it's an open source wallet, anybody can issue assets. You're going to have bad actors. I don't think that it's necessarily their fault on that. But until they put controls and compliance and governance around stuff, bad actors are going to continue to participate and take advantage of people. So I personally don't use Lobster. It's not something that I look at. But again, they could have changed things in the last 2 years since I kind of wrote it off. So if it's different now, go do your own research. I probably need to look at it again, just so that I'm sharing correct information. So this could be off. Again, just want to clarify that. This is just the response that I had after having to deliver that news to a client that lost that much money. So anyway, separate. Back to the questions at hand here. Golden Hour Fishing says, you said prior you don't want to talk about it. Is XLM evil? I'm a follower of Christ and will not be a part of anything against my faith. God bless. I'm going to stay away from that one. Catch me in private. We have a separate conversation. But I'm publicly not going to say anything about that. Joseph, he says, legend. We know that XRP will be used for cross-chain settlement at the DTCC. I don't know about cross-chain settlement. I mean, well, I guess they could. They could use Wormhole or Axelar to be able to settle that. You're accurate. XLM is ledger only. Is it true that XLM will appreciate due to gas fees only? Again, I know everybody's riled up about this. They're excited. When I'm happy for people. You know, we've known for a long time that these networks were going to be used in, you know, institutional applications. XLM again has Sorband smart contracts. They do have compliance built into the network. It is a replica of the XRPL. A little bit different on the origin account and how Jed structured that, and they burnt half the supply. Won't get into all that, but again, an exchange. So NASDAQ's an exchange. NYSE, or the New York Stock Exchange, is an exchange. There are 16 or 17 total exchanges that settle stocks or trade stocks. And then there's all these brokers that you deal with, and they might deal with one exchange or another or multiple exchanges to be able to find liquidity for stocks. And all of that's then settled and reconciled through the DTCC on the back end, the depository trust, the DTCC. So all that being said, again, I don't think it's any issue with XRP for back-end settlement. And I agree with you. I think you need cross-chain interoperability and settlement across all of that. And I think that's built into Corda's infrastructure, which is what they partnered with the DTCC on, and the primary settlement mechanism for their infrastructure, which is smart contract enabled and has all the KYC and compliance built into it, is the XRPL. Ryan, Mr. White, he says, legend. Carbon 2, DAG, Mastermind. Awesome, dude. He says, my girl keeps asking when the Jake Claver thing's happening. I have to steal remote from her and make her watch. So your answer to her. Again, I've said this before, but I'm watching these 3 months here. So May, June, July. There's a lot of things that are compiling toward or compounding towards something occurring in the short term here. I don't know if it will or not. I don't have a crystal ball. Well, the crystal ball that I have doesn't tell me the future, I should say. So all that being said, you know, with Japan going live June 1st, accepting stable coins as currency to be able to settle between counterparty banks in that jurisdiction, I think there's a there. We've got the reverse carry trade, you know, watching the yen versus the USD, we continue to climb. When I left work today, it was 159.55. We are at, let me pull it up here and I'll tell you. We are at 159.52. So we've come down. We touched 159.6. When we get back over 160, 161, 162, that's when fireworks are going to happen. So does that take a week? Does that take a couple weeks? Is it another month? The Bank of Japan's already intervened a lot of times in the currency market at this point, and I don't think that they can really do much more. I think that they need to roll out XRP to be able to raise interest rates in order to be able to, you know, have economic growth and offset the deflationary effect that that's going to have. And I think that they're going to be the first mover that actually implements XRP. And then beyond that, it'll spread globally very quickly. So, you know, continue to watch that, continue to watch oil. If we have additional escalation there in the Middle East, and we see oil spike again, oil's kind of been pushed down based on the fact that people believe that there's going to be a ceasefire or that they're coming to some type of agreement. We saw things escalate over the weekend and get a little bit hairy. So, if that continues, or there's an op that goes bad, or something happens and Iran retaliates, or they cut the underwater sea cables, or some of the other stuff that they've threatened to do, I think that things will escalate there, and that will cause oil to go. That will cause the yen to depreciate against the dollar, and that will cause Japan to intervene in the currency market, either through raising interest rates or dumping treasuries again. Tom's asked, what is the Mastermind? The Mastermind is, have you ever read Think and Grow Rich? If you haven't ever read Think and Grow Rich, I would encourage you to do so. I actually have, it's right here. So Napoleon Hill, I got this version from a gentleman that actually revived all these books and has, I don't know if he has the full IP on Napoleon Hill's stuff or not. But this was his archives, rare collection of things that were never released. Very cool. People are nice enough to send me some cool stuff sometimes. So anyway, all that being said, Think and Grow Rich, highly recommend. One of the things that it talks about in there is forming your own mastermind or being part of a mastermind. A mastermind is kind of like a brain trust. You find other very intelligent, wealthy people that are either well-connected or have value to provide you in one way or another, and you can do the same for them. And then collectively, you come together and help one another. You're able to run ideas by other people, get feedback and input from other successful people, so that you're making good decisions and you miss, the potholes that you could potentially fall into. And I think that the group that we have does a really good job of that. We have people across the spectrum, people that are just getting started in crypto very early in life. We have other people that have been extremely successful, launched multiple businesses, had exits, and have significant allocations to digital assets and are much further along in their estate planning. And there are people, like I said, there's people that are just getting started. So, you want to be part of a community where people are just a few steps ahead of you, maybe up to 5 steps ahead of you. If somebody's 28 steps ahead of you and they're, as an example, you have $100,000 and they have $1 billion, the majority of the things that they're doing at $1 billion probably isn't going to be effective for you at $100,000. The level of investments that they're going to be making, the type of due diligence that they're going to be doing on deals, the risks that they're willing to take, the way that they've structured things, their diversification. There's just a lot of things. And so that's what I'm saying. So if you had $100,000 and you were talking to somebody that had turned 100,000 into $1 million, cool, right? Like they can give you tangible, executable things, things to look out for, in doing that, making that 10x. What that's going to be. And I'm not saying that people in the mastermind give you financial advice. This could apply to business. It could apply to estate planning. It could apply to really anything you're doing. If you want to get really good at it, you need to get around other good people that are good at it. When I was in high school, I really didn't know how good I had it on the golf front. I was playing against people like Jordan Spieth and Scotty Scheffler. Both of them are a little bit younger than me, but I played in tournaments with both of them multiple times. Played with Cody Gribble and many other really good golfers that went on to play at Texas and have got the pro card. And I was a +4 handicap, and I thought I was chump change, like just because I got my butt kicked all the time by these people that were fantastic, right, and went on to be #1 in the world at some point. That's the level of people that you would like to put yourself around, because even if you're getting your butt handed to you and you're learning from that and you're able to play to their level, or at least level up, because you have to. And that's the whole point of putting yourself around. People talk about you're the sum of the 5 people you spend the most time with. I completely agree with that. And you can almost trick your brain, to be honest with you. I watch a lot of YouTube and other stuff. Luckily, you have access to those resources all the time. If you've got a smartphone or a computer, you can really kind of spend as much time as you need to with really successful people at this point, where in the past you would have had to like find them. And most people are private. They're not out here on the internet. A lot of the very successful people like the Koch family, the Marriott family, the Hill family, you're not going to see them on social media. They're not going to come out here and tell you, you know, how they're managing their assets, the way that they're structuring things. I just happened to catch one podcast with the CIO from DuPont, who's the 7th generation, you know, part of their family office. Things like that just aren't really out there. And even if they are, most people aren't looking for them. So all that being said, you know, if you can get around winners, you're likely, much more likely to be a winner. And that's what the mastermind is. It's a good culture. People lift each other up. They share, you know, ideas and education and help you climb the ladder with them, versus, you know, being a pity party or telling you can't do something, or it's not, you can't do that. It's okay. Well, how do we do it? And then if we figure it out, how do we help other people do it? So that's the power of a mastermind. And that's why we created ours. You know, I've been part of many others. I still am. You know, I'm part of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 other syndicates or groups or masterminds or whatever you want to call them. And the other net benefit for everybody in our mastermind is I go out and I find all of the really cool stuff that's out there and I bring that back, or I learn things and then try to share that with the group. So anyway, I try to provide more value in that community than I've ever received in any other mastermind. And all of the other masterminds that I've participated in have cost me at the low end $3,500 a year. At the high end, you know, $50,000 a year. So, and there's one that I'm probably going to join next year that'll be significantly more than that. So, you know, some of the most prolific ones out there are, there's, you know, Lions and Sheep, or Lions Not Sheep. There's Apex here in Dallas. There's Board of Advisors. There's Tiger 21. There's a ton of different ones, right? You got to find the one that's the best fit for you based on what outcomes you're trying to achieve. But if you are trying to make it in crypto and preserve your wealth and grow your wealth over time, and not blow it and go bankrupt in 3 to 5 years, I think that our mastermind there is no better spot to be. So if that sounds cool to you, you can go to beyondbroke.com and use the code BeyondBroke, all capitalized, the number 1, and then MO like Mary Oscar gets you the first month for $2 there in the group to try it out. Month to month, no contract, cancel anytime. But with 17,000 people sticking around, I think that says something by itself. Wager Rewards says, I have quite a bit of funds sitting available on Kraken. Lately, when I try to buy XRP, it says that there's not anything available to purchase. What's the deal with that? Well, Kraken is an exchange, so they access their own liquidity pool. And when I say liquidity pool, I don't mean a DeFi protocol. I just mean their liquidity of XRP to be able to provide that to the end user or retail that's making that purchase. Their OTC desk can still get XRP. So they partner, there's more of a brokerage. They go out to other people and facilitate trades. So if you're trading more than $250,000 in XRP, happy to pass that information along. We can get you with our broker over there. Mark Moss is his name. You just email us info@digitalfamilyoffice.io. We can get you in contact with him if you want to execute a large trade, and that will settle and go through. But if you looked at Binance and the liquidity on Binance, we saw XRP drop from the 4th percentile all the way down to 0.0432, which means there's pretty much no liquidity left on Binance. And I tend to believe that that's kind of across the majority of the exchanges. I don't believe that there's much XRP left for purchase until Ripple releases the escrow and sells their 300 million onto the market around the 1st of next month. If they do that, then that's when there would be more available. But that's the whole point of the supply shock that I've talked about, is if we see significant institutional demand and there's no XRP available on the exchanges, and they get through everything on the dark pools and the OTC desks, we're going to see the chart gap up significantly. We've already seen that happen on Upbit and on Kraken to around $91 to $100 a piece. Those are not glitches; those registered. So that tells you that the order book is very thin there. And if there isn't big enough buy order or demand that comes in and there's not enough liquidity, we are going to see XRP move substantially higher. This person says, what's the website again for the mastermind? It's beyondbroke.com. And if you want to email us to get access to different professionals, either in-house or our partners, you can just email us at info@digitalfamilyoffice.io. All right. We've got Wager Rewards again. He says, I'm thinking about going all in on XRP when the SpaceX IPO launches, assuming everyone is going to take their money out of crypto and put it towards that instead, and in turn making the price of XRP plummet. What are your thoughts? I don't believe that at all. Anybody that has smart money is not going to be chasing gains in SpaceX. The total addressable market for SpaceX, according to Elon the other day, was $28.5 trillion. They're going to launch at $1 trillion, $2 trillion market cap. XRP has substantially more upside than SpaceX at this point. We did have an allocation that we ended up unfortunately passing on about 2 years ago for $5 million at $97 a share at the time. I wish we had had the ability to raise that money at the time in order to be able to purchase those shares. We just didn't have enough interest through the group and the grapevine that we have. I think we would now. Like, everybody knows that that's going to be a winner at this point, and they're all trying to pile in on it on private equity before it goes public. But a lot of the upside's lost at this point, right? Or not lost, but already gained by those that got in early and participated. So all that being said, I don't think that you're going to see any rotation out of crypto chasing SpaceX stock. What I've noticed about people in crypto is they tend to be pretty crypto-centric. At least these are the conversations I'm having. Again, I don't talk to everybody in the world, but just on our side of the fence, you know, we have 4,000 clients over there at DWP. And then we've got, you know, like I said, 17,000 people in the mastermind. People are watching the stock market. Some people still have an allocation there through their wealth manager or direct allocation through specific stocks. But FOMOing into something. And here's the other thing about IPOs. So the initial public offering normally has a lockup period for the private investors that were in beforehand. I don't know what that's going to be on SpaceX. They can make it whatever. I'm not sure what it was on Tesla, but I would suspect that Elon would make it similar. That being said, if you look at Gemini, if you look at Circle, if you look at almost every other IPO in the last couple years, they've fallen off a cliff as soon as they list. They don't continue to go up. If it's a direct listing, I mean, Coinbase was a direct listing and it also fell off a cliff. So SPACs tend to do pretty well. Evernorth has a SPAC that they're going public through. They filed their S4. Seems like they got that through, and we're just waiting on the announcement for them to finalize that. That might be something people chase because I think that there's, you know, again, not financial advice, but I think there's still upside in that. But as far as people rotating out of their XRP to chase SpaceX, I think that that's, based on the conversations I'm having, definitely, I disagree. I don't think that that's a narrative at all. All right. He says, Jake, Bank SoFi officially opens access to its own stablecoin for 15 million users. I don't understand why. If the OCC hasn't published its report yet, banks are already offering stablecoins. Is that true that soft tokenization DTCC starts on 7/13? I do think that they are going to start rolling out tokenization of ETFs and structured products in July this year. And the back-end settlement would have already had to move to real time or T+0 for them to be able to do that. That was made clear by the president of NASDAQ last year at Swell when she spoke with Monica Long. I've referenced that I don't know how many times, but she said that the first place that they're going to implement distributed ledger technology is for back-end reconciliation and settlement between the DTCC and the clearinghouse, for the DTCC with the clearinghouse and the brokers. It's not tokenization of stocks first. It's settlement first and then tokenization of stocks. So if they are going to be tokenizing stocks in July, like I told you guys, I'm watching May, June, July for some implementation of this stuff and maybe the reverse carry trade and everything else I've been talking about. So we'll see. There are no guarantees. I don't have a crystal ball that tells me the future. But that's kind of the time frame that I'm watching for things to move here. And yeah, some of these, so SoFi is very progressive also. I think banks that are neobanks and fintech forward, they are probably going to go ahead and move and take the chance that the OCC is going to regulate it the way that they've issued it. If they're doing it to a high level or standard, same way Ripple's doing it, then they're probably fine. And, that makes sense that they would be one of the ones to move. Mike Cagney, who built SoFi, is now over at Figure Markets. He's taken that company public. He's a prolific founder and very intelligent individual with financial engineering. He's rolling up about a $1.5 billion worth of mortgage-backed securities on chain on provenance every single month. He's also doing auto loans now. And he has a couple liquidity pools over there. I think the auto loans pay 9%, and you can contribute in stables or their stable coin to that liquidity pool and earn 9% on your stable coin. And then their HELOC program, I think, earns 8.3% over there. So some really good opportunities as things progress here in the market. And if you're borrowing against your assets at 3 to 5% in the near future because the BIS regulates it a tier 1 asset, you could probably park that in some of that stuff that Mike's got and arbitrage that and earn a pretty good return. So lots of cool things. We also, one of the other things I saw this evening that I haven't touched on, Archax. Congratulations to Graham and the guys over there. Graham's a good guy. I've met and had beers with him a couple times. BNY Mellon and a lot of their institutional money market and yield-bearing products are now tokenized, and they're offering those through Archax. So they, more of an institutional provider working with treasury management services and other large players in the market. But shout out to Archax for getting that across the line and being as progressive as they are. Really cool to see that partnership codified and announced. BJT Forever says the remaining supply of XRP could easily be purchased by the 1% in a matter of minutes. Will the game soon flip from XRP abundance to scarcity with the DTCC going full live in October or July? Here's the deal. And this is, again, if it's going to sound crappy, I'm not going to say it that way. The wealthy people think very different than the average person. Okay. They're not trying to make wealth. They've already made their wealth. You should only have to get rich once. Okay. They are looking at wealth preservation. Anything that is outside of their risk tolerance, they're not going to touch until it's verified. One example of this would be Berkshire Hathaway and Apple. They didn't get in Apple early. They didn't understand Apple. They understood See's Candy and Coca-Cola and Geico Insurance. They now hold a significant position in Apple. Now they've sold a lot of that off and many of their other positions to be able to accumulate the $400 billion cash position that they have at this point. But all that being said, that is how wealthy people operate. They're looking at later stage companies and IPOs most of the time, unless it is in the bucket of gambling money that they have, where they know that they're going to put it into high risk and they're looking for beta across all of those early stage startups. And they know most of them are going to fail, but the ones that win are going to be big winners and it's going to offset the losses. If you're there, when I talk to family offices and the wealthy, um, they want to hedge downside risk. So they want options or structured derivatives around the XRP or other digital assets they're investing in. They want to run much more sophisticated strategies than the average person would. They're not a buy and hold ride through the volatility. They're trying to make cash flow off of it by selling puts or calls, collecting that premium, and then also participating in the market and the upside when it happens. But also, if it moves down, they have a cash position ready to be able to cover for their put that they've issued that's generating cash flow, and then average into the market further down. And on the way up, they're taking profit with the calls that they put out there that they're generating premium with. So much more sophisticated. And until those products are readily available for the ultra affluent, they're not touching this market. They don't care to. Again, they've already made their wealth. If you have billions of dollars, you're not trying to make billions of dollars. You're trying to grow your portfolio at 8 to 10% a year, generate enough cash flow for your family or whatever needs you have. It becomes much simpler at that point. And you're going to be diversified. You're going to spread that across, multi-jurisdictional, multiple currencies, multiple different asset classes, to be able to hedge the risk and volatility in any one of those circumstances, so that if any one of those, bets that you made goes south, it's not the end of you and your family's wealth. So very different game when you talk about, it's really not even the 1%. Top 1% makes about $600,000 a year here in the US. So I'm probably talking about the 0.001%, which is a very, small group of people. But I think a lot of you are going to be in that group in the not too distant future if you have a significant allocation, whatever that means to you, in digital assets, or, I have a special affinity for XRP, obviously. So all that being said, I'm trying to share those things with you because your paradigm is going to have to shift. And if it doesn't, you can find yourself in a similar position. I'll share another story with you. 2021, first time I ever flew on a private jet. I paid $8,000, felt like super insecure, like people are going to look down on me. We got on the jet. Everybody was super cool. That was one of the paradigm shifts that happened for me, is like, wealthy people are not mean or biggity, or, it's not like they're going to look down. They're mostly pretty cool people. They've figured out how to create value in society at scale and helped a lot of people, and they were able to generate a bunch of money doing it, charging a fair price for whatever it was. But all that being said, we flew out to an NFT event in Florida, Elevator Nights by Dan Fleischman, or Fleischman, however you say his last name. He's the youngest person to ever take a company public at 19 years old. You can go look him up. Very cool. He puts on Elevator Nights. They're completely free. If he's putting one on in your area, I would suggest you go. They're always good. He always has fantastic speakers. But anyway, while we were there, and this is, I'm going to land the plane here. If you don't change that paradigm, you're going to take undue risk, and then you could end up going bankrupt or losing all the wealth that you made. So the example I could give you is, at that conference, there was an ETH billionaire. There was actually 5 billionaires in the room. But he got up there on stage and he spoke, and he was touting UST and Luna at the time. And the way that he had made his money is he had rolled it all. He got in Bitcoin early. He rolled all of it on the Ethereum ICO. He went to prison for 5 years. I won't share why. And when he got out, the wallet that he had that had the Ethereum in it, he had left in the top of a closet, and it was still there. And he was a billionaire. Wild story, I know. And so anyway, what he had done is he took that ETH, staked it with Aave, borrowed against it at 90% LTV, took that Tether, stuck it back in Aave, borrowed against it again at 90% LTV, and took over $2 billion and staked it with UST, and was earning 20%. And he was able to service the debt on the other side because it was at like 3 or 4% interest. That's the type of crazy stuff that ends up backfiring and losing you money very quickly. When you continue to risk it all and roll it all at a certain point, the only person that I've ever seen do that successfully is Elon Musk. There are so many people that have not got as lucky as he has. He almost went bankrupt on Tesla and SpaceX, was sued by the SEC, all these other things, and he's made it through all of that. And now he's the wealthiest person in the world. And people look at that and say, well, he should just give all that away because they think it's liquid. It's not liquid. It's tied up in his stock. And I think he cut the U.S. government the largest tax check that's ever been written last year when he sold some of his SpaceX stock. He cut him like a $10 billion check or something crazy. All that being said, you should only have to get rich once. If you're in the right positions and you see what's coming with the implementation of these protocols and networks, you're going to be fine. And if this ends up being, designated a tier 1 asset, like how much better could that get? You invested in something that skyrocketed in price and now it's a riskless asset according to the BIS. So I'm not saying to diversify and sell it off and do all of that. I think that you're going to have amicable, many different ways to be able to leverage it to produce cash flow, borrow against it while it continues to appreciate in value over time, pass it down through multiple generations. It's a deflationary asset. So this is unique in wealth creation. Most people, sell a business and then they take, 100 million, 200 million, $1 billion, whatever they sold that for, and they diversify that cash after they've paid the taxes. So anyway, we will help people navigate that at Digital Wealth Partners. If you need a financial advisor that understands all this stuff and can help you work through it when that happens, we would love to work with you. All you got to do is go to digitalwealthpartners.net. And if you already have, 50,000 XRP or at least $100,000 in XRP, digital assets, then they can go ahead and work with you now so that we're already in the queue and you're working with an advisor. And when everything does play out, they'll be able to help you navigate and got somebody to call. The old nail pounder, my man, he says, hey, Jake, I got a call from Laughlin about my move to DAG. Good till July with Laughlin. So when DAG changes the registered agent, they will be using my home address and that nullifies anonymity. No, the answer is no. We file it in a way where your name does not appear on there. We're the agent. We have a registered agent that's address appears on there. Yeah. So whenever you want to transition over to us in July, you're not going to lose any creditor protection or any anonymity or any of the tax benefits. We're only going to make sure that it's done the right way, which is what we showed them how to do. All right. Off the Grid Hero says, after Moon, first investment to look at. It really just kind of depends on your domain expertise and where you want to put your money. I think a lot of people would do good to just sit on it. So, wait 6 months. Keep working your day job. Don't make any rash decisions or emotional decisions. Make sure that you've surrounded yourself with the right professionals to be able to do due diligence on investments and make sure that it's the right move for you. Understand the tax consequences that are going to occur. There's a lot of considerations that you want to make before, things, you make certain moves post price appreciation. And you want to understand all those risks and all the consequences of those decisions before you make them. So take your time. Warren Buffett talks about, if you only had 20 investments to make over your lifetime, you would be very methodical about the investments that you made. So all that being said, I don't know if you're asking me specifically or if you're talking about yourself, I would speak with your financial advisor. That's probably the best choice of action. But for me personally, the things that I will be most interested in are going to be data centers, infrastructure for compute at scale, might buy some Bitcoin miners, not to mine Bitcoin with them, but to swap out the infrastructure to be able to power compute for AI. I think that that's going to be a big thing over the next 2, 3, 4 years. Separate of that, quantum computing is going to be another big industry. Space, another big industry. You want things with tailwinds, things that are in the third, fourth inning that you see have traction, kind of like SpaceX now. People get it. They understand the utility of it. They understand why he's doing. Elon's created that with the mesh satellite network that we have over the entire planet at this point. The rockets to be able to ship things, 30 minutes from Dallas to Japan. Like there's a huge advantage to what he's built that disrupts tons of industries. And people are starting to understand that. So if you can find other progressive technologies that are going to do the same thing and find the companies that are going to be the winners in those spaces, obviously those will always be great returns. But again, a large portion of your net worth, you're probably going to want to structure in a way where you're taking very low risk that has a steady return. There's a reason that there's bonds and mutual funds and, annuities, things that pay out on a very, low yield, but on a continuous basis to generate cash flow, treasuries, the boring stuff. And then once you have that in place and your cash flow is good and you have them enough to live on and everything's settled, then you can look at the more exotic stuff or how you're going to continue to put, a portion of your net worth to work in a way that generates outsized returns or has additional alpha beyond the beta that you'd be getting from the other things you're investing in. So that's how I would think through that. And that's actually a really good question. I think a lot of people have. So thank you for asking it. Off the Grid Hero again, he says, kind of hope there's another highish price crypto, so XRP holders doesn't get targeted by hackers or randos, and XLM a sleeper, high ROI. So there will always be the next thing, but you are well, I don't want to say that. If you've told a bunch of other people, which, like, I'm a public facing figure, if I could have the impact that I want to make without doing this, then, I would probably go that way. And, I value privacy and anonymity and a lot of that other stuff. But to have the impact that I want to have, I'm out here publicly talking about this stuff. For you and other people that are watching, if you haven't told a ton of people, I would tell people that you do actually want to help and you think listen to you. But outside of the scope of that, you probably want to keep it on the DL and not be sharing it with a ton of people, because you will become a target. I was actually at the family office conference that I was just at in New Orleans. They had a company that they used to work for the US government and do ops on other people and like hack their Wi-Fi and their systems in order to be able to get inside and shut things down or get information. And they shared some really interesting ways that they went about that and how they help other people navigate that and how they provide a risk score to you and your family. Because it's not just you. Even if you've done everything for yourself to make sure that you're mitigating those risks, it's a lot of times it's your loved ones that are frequenting a coffee shop or have a pretty regular cadence in their schedule, and they go certain places at certain times. And, all of those things are trackable on your phone at this point. So if they SIM swap you, or one of the other things they talked about was like the USB chargers at the airport. If you plug directly into that and somebody has replaced that plug with something that downloads the data off of your phone and it doesn't just charge it, you're giving them all of that data, and they also now have access to your phone. So think about that next time you're at a public airport and you're charging your phone off of one of those plugs by the seats. I know that gave me the heebie-jeebies, because I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm not doing that again. So anyway, all that being said, there's a lot of different exposures out there. You unfortunately likely will become the target for somebody. how professional they are, just depends. But we have people in our network to help you navigate those risks and make sure that you're mitigating those as much as possible. We have other ways to be able to help you remove information off the dark web and other websites, private security, all that fun stuff. So all the things that you don't really worry about now, but you might want to consider as things appreciate here, we've already thought through and we are prepared for. Brent, he says, hey, Jake, NFA thoughts, not financial advice, thoughts on XRP, using XRP ETFs for profits, never selling my holdings, or should I flip them for actual XRP? Thank you. Again, tax consequences. What are your long-term objectives and goals? How does that benefit you? What's your cost basis and how much are you going to owe? How have you bought them? Is it inside of a Roth or an IRA? There's tons of questions that I would ask there to really going to give you any type of clear answer on that. And again, I can't give you financial advice. It's only going to be are the financial advisors that are licensed, have a Series 65, and are able to do that. They can really help you walk through that, navigate that situation. So that'd be my recommendation. Reach out to Digital Wealth Partners, and then based on how you've purchased them, what your long-term plans are and objectives, they can help you navigate that and decide whether to sell and rotate that into something else, or whether to hold it there and margin those ETFs and then use that in a way where you're able to generate additional cash flow through like a laddered treasury strategy. A lot of the way that we look at XRP, and I think how many other wealth managers will too, post price appreciation, is kind of like appreciated stock. So many times founders or early investors in companies that have been very successful have significant positions. They're holding a lot of shares of a corporation that's gone public. And if they sell them, they're going to have significant tax consequences, like really big tax consequences. So what they do is they'll sell calls or puts, use an option strategy. Sometimes they collar it. And you could buy or sell, just depends on what you're trying to do. They run an option strategy or a collar strategy on it so that they're generating premium. And if the stock falls, they sell some, or if it goes up, they sell some, or if it goes down, they might be buying some with the profits they took when it went up. There's a lot of different ways to be able to do it and mitigate taxes and supplement your income. And I think that people will be doing that with XRP. Those options are starting to become a lot more mature in that market. And right now, it's mainly just QPs that are, have access to that, which is a qualified purchaser. You have to have 5 million in net worth. Most of the people that are holding substantial amounts of XRP will be in that category, I think, in the not too distant future. And so I think that that'll be a way that a lot of people play it. But you could also do that with the ETFs as well. David, he says, any idea on why it has been over a month and still no Uphold trading on DAG's platform? Any options to pay you AUM fees with anchorage through DWP? Yeah, you can absolutely pay your AUM fees. All you got to do is wire the money over there to Digital Wealth Partners. They can get you the bank account. You just reach out to your advisor and then get you situated there. On the other side with Uphold, I knew I was going to get this question tonight, so I'm not going to dodge it. They are slowly working through the backlog of people. You're not the only one. There are many people that are still waiting on accounts. Unfortunately, when they originally wrote the SLA, they had estimated, 48, 72 hours that they would be able to approve accounts. But with the volume of people that came through, they didn't really prepare for that. And so I believe they've got like 500 accounts all the way through, fully set up, KYB, bank accounts established, trading capabilities are there. And we've got like 1,500 people through KYB. They still haven't established accounts. There's another 1,000 people that have made it through KYB, but they're working to spin up the bank account and the trading functionality. And then there's the other half, which is another 1,500 yeah, about 1,500 people, maybe 2,000 people that still haven't even been KYB'd. Their process, it's really not even Uphold's fault. I learned that today. They are reliant on a third-party third-party provider that does their KYC, KYB. And anytime they upload more than 10 people to get verified, it basically crashes that bandwidth on that provider's site. So that's why it's taking so long. It's just a very manual, cumbersome, not great process. So, I'm sure that they're probably evaluating different partners at this point for that service because of the volume that we've put through there in a very short period of time. And for that reason, until you stress test systems, people are okay with doing manual stuff. I'll give you another example. So when we first started working with what used to be Securitized before Anchorage acquired them and was originally On-Ramp, which is kind of the TAMP platform they use, a lot of what they did was manual. And really, so we are the largest RIA for crypto in the world by orders of magnitude. And what I mean by that is the next closest RIA that manages crypto at Anchorage, total number of accounts at Anchorage for clients is like 25, 40, I think is like really getting it. So we have 4,000. So we're literally 100 times larger in client base than the next closest RIA in the world. So when we started putting volume through the pipes over there for the compliance and KYB and, establishing accounts and all that, it originally took like 4 to 6 weeks when people first started onboarding with us in October of 2024. Similar to what we're seeing here with Uphold. It's like 4 to 6 weeks to get the account approved, sometimes longer, apparently. So I appreciate the patience and the grace on it. I can guarantee you we will work through it over time and it will get much better. But until you stress test a system like that, people are okay with doing things manually because it worked for then, but it doesn't work and it's not scalable. So we tend to have that effect on all the partners that we've worked with over the years. We are more than an hour in, and again, appreciate all the questions. I'm going to go ahead and go all the way to the bottom and work my way back up through the super chats. Please like, subscribe, share, hype the YouTube. I always forget to say that a couple times in the live. It does help the algorithm, helps the channel, and I'm hoping to get to 200,000 subscribers here in the near future. So thank y'all for any help in that effort. Lip Jones, they say, would this be a good entry point on leveraged XRP? I am not a financial advisor, but however, I will give you my opinion. This is just my opinion. You should not take action based on my opinion alone. You should go do all your own stuff. I think that there's going to be some substantial volatility in the crypto market. What does that mean? That could mean up or down, or both in a very short period of time. So to be in the leveraged XRP ETF, if it goes up and there is no down, you're going to do fantastic. But the leveraged XRP ETFs, there's two of them. There's a 3x leverage and a 2x leverage. It's meant to be traded. If you just leave your investment in there over an extended period of time, you end up netting out pretty much effectively zero. It's almost like allocating to a regular ETF, and you might actually lose money depending on what the volatility is because it's levered both directions. It's not like it's levered just one way. So all that being said, I think for risk tolerance and suitability, most people are probably better off just purchasing an ETF rather than playing with leverage. Most people that allow you to buy the leveraged ETFs are going to have to qualify you. So, either you're sophisticated enough to understand the leverage and they've, done due diligence and provided you, the ability to trade based on their recommendation, or you have enough money that if you mess it up, it's not going to be the end of the world for you. And that's kind of the accredited or QP status here in the US. So I would say most people shouldn't touch that. If they are touching it, they should understand the risks associated with it, and that leverage works in both directions. It's not just up, and it's meant to be traded. It's not really kind of like a buy and hold leverage product. MGA 1222 says, I get not financial advice, but thinking about XRP within a Roth IRA at this point, how do you decide which ETF to buy XRP through? Do you sell to get into a better fund when BlackRock ETF becomes available? So really the only difference on the ETFs are going to be the fees that you pay. Providers of the ETFs will get competitive. And I do think that when BlackRock enters the market, it will see the costs on the ETFs for XRP come down. They have the, IBIT is the lowest cost ETF for Bitcoin exposure. So I guess 25 bips is what I think it is. And, most of the other ones are somewhere between, actually, I think there's one cheaper than that now. And a lot of the other ones are somewhere between 30 and 40 bips. So just look at that on the XRP ETFs that you're participating in. I like Steve and Canary Capital. They were a leader. They were the first one to launch it. So if you want to support innovators and people like that, would encourage you to look at their ETF. I'm not saying to allocate to that one. There's a lot of considerations. But, we've sponsored some events with them, full disclosure. They're good people. I think that they do a good job. I don't know some of the stuff they're working on, which will be cool. So, there's a lot of considerations when you're making an allocation to different ETFs. I would do a lot of research and then pick whichever one's going to be best for you, but all of them are going to be spot exposure to XRP. And if you have a Roth IRA and you want to trade XRP and compound it inside that Roth IRA and want to have direct exposure without the fees associated with the ETFs, then you could definitely work with Digital Wealth Partners. They have a product, an algorithmic trading product for that. Old No Pounder again, he says, almighty legend. Appreciate you, dude. I've already moved my LLC to DAG about a month ago. I didn't think Laughlin was on the up and up. Really close to onboarding. Looking forward to price appreciation. God bless. God bless you, dude. Thank you for the kind words and the support. And, working with us through the transitions. We've had many partners over the years. I've learned at this point that it's better off to just do it ourselves, if at any at all possible. If it doesn't require regulatory oversight, we have the means at this point to just bring things in-house or make acquisitions to be able to do it. And so, yeah, all that being said, thank you. And I think most everybody will also figure that out. Keith Butt says, hey, Jake, appreciate you, brother. A coworker has bought XRP through Uphold, maxed out buying 3 times and had his account flagged and canceled. No phone number. AI bots wouldn't listen anymore. Please advise. That is the problem with exchanges. They do whatever they want. You're a creditor. They can close your account at any time, similar to a bank account. I don't know if you've ever been debanked by somebody, but they're like, hey, we'll cut you a check. You might get it in 3 to 5 weeks. And you're like, excuse me? Like, I need that money. I need access to that money. And they're like, yeah, too bad. So, any of these exchanges, what I'll say about us is I don't have direct control over any of that. I can put in a good word. But if, you're a terrorist, I can't help you. If, you're on the sanctions list or OFAC or any of that, then I can help you. But if it's just something simple like that, where you looked like a bot and the account gets flagged, the DAG app isn't going to shut you down and take your assets and tell you pack sand. So, I really like Uphold's instance. I think they make a fantastic product. Another announcement today that I forgot to mention earlier, The EXA credit card is now available over there on Uphold. If you guys want to go check that out, you can post your XRP as the collateral for the credit and be issued a credit card against your digital assets. So shout out to Nancy and the team over there at Uphold, continuing to innovate and bring cool products to market. Excited that we might be able to roll that out to our people in the not too distant future. It's going to take a while. You know, we got to get through the backlog of people first and make sure KYB is good, and then we'll be able to start to roll out some of these other cool products with Uphold as our partner on that side. You guys did good on the super chats. Y'all realize what time it was, and not a whole lot of people wrote anymore. There we go. Forever woken. 3 in. They said Legendario. Appreciate you, dude. I'm in the top 1% of XRP holders, already have an LLC. Would like to know what's going to be the minimum to work with DWP after price appreciation. So again, we kind of, I don't know if we talked about this on the town hall on Monday or the live on Monday, but I will rehash it again here. It really just depends on where XRP goes. If it's $10, you know, we're probably going to keep those minimums low. If it's $100, they're going to be a little bit higher. If it's $1,000 XRP, we're probably at 20 million to work with us, you know? And that's not to say we won't bring those minimums down over time, but I don't want the level of service that we provide the clients that do qualify to drop off because we're trying to bite off more than we can chew. Part of the other reason we launched the Uphold app or the DAG app with Uphold is to provide a lot of the same benefits that you would get through the products and services that we have at DWP, but through that application. And we're still working through the logistics on how to do that over time and roll those two things together. There's compliance, there's legal, there's a bunch of stuff that we have to work through. But, you know, people that don't quite qualify for that may still have, the idea is to have like a robo-advisor and a lot of the same products, you know, not all the products, but a lot of the lower risk products available there in the app to people. And then you can kind of self-serve on those. So, you know, we want to democratize access. We want to be able to help as many people as we possibly can. We're not trying to leave anybody behind. But private client services don't necessarily make sense for anybody less than $20 million. Like, you don't need bill pay and concierge and private jets and all the other fun stuff that we do have the partners and capabilities to do until you're at a point where those things make sense. Like I talked about earlier, like if you got $100,000 and you're taking advice from somebody that's a billionaire, they could tell you to, you know, fly private to save time. But when it costs you $50,000 for the private jet to go to New York and then back, like you just ate up half of your entire net worth. And for them, it's a drop in the bucket, right? So we want to meet people where they are. We want to make sure that you have the tools and the education and access to everything that you need to be successful over the long term, and continue to cultivate relationships with people and be there for you as much as we can be for whatever position you're in. So I don't know if that's the answer you wanted. And I think that's a little more detailed than what I gave the other day, because I think people, you know, people take things at face value, and they also hear what they want to hear. But we are here to help you. The goal of the mastermind is to help 1 million people become financially free. That's literally the stated goal of the mastermind. And that's my goal. Like that is the level of impact that I want to have. So to do that, it's not just the big people. And you will, like, there'll be a lot of people that are little people that will be very big people later on. As far as net worth, everybody is a fantastic human being and they all have the same rights and all that other stuff. But I'm just saying, as far as like, you know, the necessity to have all these additional services and products, sometimes they don't make sense if you're not at a certain level of net worth. And I don't believe in selling people stuff that they don't need also, right? Like the whole benefit of working with an MFO or our products is that you get the most for the least. Like I always want people to feel like, oh, wow, I would pay more for this. So anyway, that's the goal. We're not always perfect. I'm doing the best I can with what I got. So, you know, give me some grace on stuff. And give me feedback. I appreciate people's feedback. It helps me get better. It helps our team get better, and provide more value. And we want to make sure that we're doing, like I said, the best we can with what we got in order to be able to help as many people as we possibly can. So, Will says, hey, Jake, hello from Bastrop, Texas. So after price appreciation, what's your take on levering XRP to buy businesses like self-storage, laundromats, parking lots, etc.? So we've had Ben Kelly come in the mastermind. If you guys don't know who Ben Kelly is, I would go check him out. He helps people buy boring businesses, cash flowing businesses. He's bought 8 businesses in the last 4 or 5 years. Currently makes about $1.3 million a year, working 30 hours a week. Ben's a good friend. He's good people. And he has a mastermind called Acquisition Ace, where he teaches people exactly how to do all those things with SBA loans and creative financing. So we have access to those people. If that is your cup of tea and that's where what you want to do with your wealth is, you know, make acquisitions of businesses that cash flow, that are boring, they're going to be around. You know, baby boomers are transitioning out of them. People want to sell stuff. They're passing on to their kids. They want nothing to do with it. And they want to sell it. There's going to be lots and lots of that out there in the market and plenty of opportunities for it. We definitely have the people to be able to help you navigate that if that's your investment mandate post price appreciation. We've got P-Band, J24, 3% rich list XRP holder. Should I start dollar cost averaging at XLM now instead of XRP? Have had some for years, not enough to be life changing at this point with my current holdings of XLM. Bless you. Can't tell you what to do. If you think based on the announcement today that there's going to be significant price appreciation on XLM and it's going to be the next hot thing and you're already happy with your XRP bag and you've met your goal, cool. Me personally, I'm still dollar cost averaging into XRP, but that like I've told you guys before, that's kind of my S&P 500. Like it's a set it, forget it. Don't have to think about it, rebalance, you know, try to decide if I need to set a new goal or, you know, I've got enough and now I'm focused on this other stuff. I want to diversify. Diversification is a hedge against ignorance. If you are unsure if it's XRP or XLM or HBAR or which one it's going to be, then you probably want exposure to all of them. If you're highly confident that it's going to be one or the other, then that's probably where you're going to place your bets, right? And again, I've said this before, I made my money in 2021 being diversified at 13 positions. Some of those flopped and some of them did really, really good. I would have made more money if I had doubled down on the ones that I thought were going to do really, really good that did. So again, you learn things. Speak with your financial advisor. If they're a good fiduciary, they're going to tell you to diversify. But that's not always like if you're in wealth creation mode, like I talked about this a little bit earlier. Post price appreciation, you're in wealth preservation. Before price appreciation on some of these assets, you're in wealth creation mode, and you need to like. If I hadn't gone deep on the ones that I went in on, and I had laid it across 50 assets, wouldn't have done anywhere near as well. But I went deep on 13, which is I think probably too much diversification. But I was ignorant, didn't know what I was doing, and I thought, okay, I don't know which one of these is going to be the thing. I'm just going to throw some money, you know, make it meaningful enough that if one of them hits, you know, we're good, and multiple of them hit. So if your multiple is XRP, XLM, HBAR, Algo, Hash, Flare, trying to think what else would be, you know, maybe you got some Chainlink in there, maybe you've got I already said Hedera, you know. Those are my top 5 or 6, 7 different Ondo. You know, there's plenty of them out there that are going to be around. They're going to be successful. They're going to have some, you know, demand, institutional demand on them that's going to push the price higher. Quant, you know, there's lots of them. So if you wanted diversification against, you know, the ignorance that you might have, and you're like, I don't know which one of these things is going to be the thing, or if they're all going to be the thing. I just want exposure to the space. That's why a lot of people buy the S&P, and it's so hard to perform the S&P 500. It's the top 500 companies in the stock market. And if some of them fall out of the top 500, it replaces it with another company, right? Like, it's, for most people, it's very difficult to pick winners. But if you're here and you've done the research and you understand what's happening, you're probably going to be able to pick some winners. 3D G-Man says MPTs on the XRPL or no. Which crit amendments are pending? I'm assuming you mean critical. And there are multi-purpose tokens on the XRPL that's already been passed. So those are like NFTs, but they're a fungible token, and you can basically issue, different types of stock and voting rights or other benefits to holding different types of fungible assets. That's what a multi-purpose token is. And then the other critical amendments that I think are impeding institutional adoption or will follow shortly after: liquidity pools, AMMs, pseudo accounts. There's some other ones that are higher up there, like Amendment 101. There's a couple hundred amendments at this point. There's a few in the 80s and a couple in the hundreds, low hundreds, that are like more of an institutional type stuff. You've already got partners for zero knowledge proof. You've already got credentials, digital identity, permission domain, permission DEX, batch payments. I don't think that that's going to be required for the XRPL to scale because of the implicit or explicit subnet that Bob Way has the patent on that he gave to Ripple. But yeah, those are just, go check it out. You can go to XRPscan/amendments, and you can go look at all the amendments that are currently being voted on. And then if you want to click through into one of them, I think that there's a whole GitHub of all of the other amendments that are currently in backlog or being proposed. Keith, thank you for the super chat, my man. We got Magoo. He says, Jake, my man, not financial advice, just some guy on the internet risking it all. We appreciate you. Any new alpha on events playing out by July 4th? Thanks. I think the reverse carry trade will play out by July 4th. That was kind of what I alluded to on my comment on Patrick Bet-David's post a little bit earlier today. I said, you'll be calling me in the next couple months to be on the show, which sounds very cocky, but I think they're aware of me at this point. At least I would hope so. A lot of people have commented my name on his comments before when he's asked, who should I have on? So I'm trying to get on his radar. And I thought, that'll probably wave a flag. And it did. I think that post got like as many likes as his post got, which was wild. So thank you guys for, again, none of this is possible without y'all. I appreciate all the support and the kind words and the help. And it really does mean a lot. I'm very grateful. I feel very blessed to be in a position to provide value to other people and have the trust and the support of the community. So thank you all. But separate to that, other things by July 4th, I do think the reverse carry trade will play out, which will then cascade the other events that I've talked about in the domino theory. I don't think that they can tokenize the stock market without the back-end settlement of the stock market moving to T+0. So I would expect that stocks would move to 23.5 when they move to back-end settlement of T+0. I think that could happen by July. Well, I say that they're doing the soft phase rollout in July of tokenization of the stock market. So I don't know that that'll happen by July 4th. I'm hopeful that we get the gold-backed bonds on the 250th anniversary, like Judy Sheldon's talked about. I think that that'll be awesome. If the reverse carry trade unwinds at scale, I think that Tether's going to have implications for Bitcoin. Both of those are going to have some issues during that duration. And that would also mean that XRP would be a substantially higher price. So, the soft rollout of the tokenization of the stock market, I think, is July 13th. Could they kick the can on that? Absolutely. Could I be off on timing again? Absolutely. I'm hopeful. I'm optimistic. I think the circumstances lead to that outcome, but again, my crystal ball does not tell me time frames. Only events. No, not even the events. All of this is an educated guess based on an amalgamation of conversations, other videos I've watched, other smart people that talk about these things that operate in their kind of blinders driven lane, but I'm able to extrapolate out what they say and kind of pair that with other conversations and other people. And I do well with pattern recognition. So anyway, all that to say, that's what I'm hopeful for in that duration of time. Is it a definite outcome? Not by any means, but a lot of signs point to yes, that those things should occur. Let's see here. Timwell and 5053 Legend, 2 months in with my DAG LLC. I have questions about the financial processes between Uphold, bank accounts, and my LLC. Would joining the mastermind help? Yeah, it would absolutely help. There's a ton of people in there that have already dealt with all of that, and they can provide you. This is what I'm talking about. Like, if you're going through things and you don't quite understand, and you're not getting all the support that you need from our team, which I would reach out to them first and just ask them a few questions. But if that's taken longer than you would like and you just want some other people to bounce some stuff off of, the mastermind's fantastic for that. There's, like I said, most people in there are just a few steps ahead of you. And so they're able to provide you context because they've already worked through that and they can help you navigate those potholes. So thank you for the great question. And again, would love to see you there in the group. Daniel, he says, just wanted to let you know I still have positive insight on your theories. I always wish you and your family the best. Thank you, man. Same to you and your family. He says, I hope we get to see something soon for XRP. So tired of the manipulation. I don't think you're going to be tired of the manipulation when they manipulate it up. They can manipulate it down. They can also manipulate it up. JJ Blends, excuse me. He says, Jake, what do you think about hash flow? Never heard of it. It's not something that I pay much attention to. I say that somebody else has mentioned that before. I should probably look into it. It's not anything that's on my radar. Hash is Provenance's token, and that's the one that I'm bullish on. But again, not financial advice. You should probably look at hash flow too. There's lots of opportunities out there in the market. Invest at your own risk. K1411 GCN. They say, hey Jake, you mentioned that XRP token itself moves the value. Say I need $1 million converted into currency B and XRP as the bridge. That means $1 million worth of XRP would be used as the bridge. Yep. That's what would move through the DEX. And if it was settling through XRP, XRP would move that value for you. And they could route that liquidity through a liquidity pool or an AMM. But both of those are going to lock up XRP in them in order to be able to facilitate that. And XRP would provide the settlement itself. So if you'd effectively swap out of $1 million to yen, and you could send it through XRP and settle in 3 to 5 seconds for less than a penny. But it would require $1 million worth of XRP to be able to move that value from point A to point B. And that's why David Schwartz said, if XRP was, $1, it would take 1 million XRP. And if it's $1 million a piece, then it only takes 1 XRP to move $1 million. Brad Knight says, legend. Appreciate you, dude. He says, I'm sure your staff, large XRP holders, what precautions have you taken to prevent crickets in the office after price appreciation? You know what? Like, most of our staff has an allocation, but they're not all in. There's a lot of people that work for us that believe in the long-term vision. They understand it, but they're not quite, they're a bit more conservative, right? And you would probably want that from your financial advisor. You probably don't want them to be like somebody that's super risky. providing you financial advice. You'd want them to be a good steward and fiduciary and be hedging risks themselves and understand risks. So, most of our staff on the wealth management side, they do not have a portfolio like mine. They are fairly diversified. They're in a bunch of different things. And they have some allocation to crypto, and it might be a larger portion of their portfolio than most other people, but it's not, the whole thing that they have, like myself. So there's that. And then, a lot of people that have started working here are like, well, if you believe in this much, okay, I'm going to take a portion of my paycheck and put it over there, and I'll start dollar cost averaging too. And then we have some people that came from the mastermind or other places that, similar to myself, have significant conviction, and they do have a large allocation. All that being said, the cool thing about our employees, and I feel super blessed again, like none of this is possible without our employees and our fantastic clients. They would do it for free. Like, I don't know how to explain. If you've never had fulfillment in your job, it's really difficult to explain, like, the feeling that you get knowing that you're actually helping people and making a difference in their life. Like, no amount of money is going to be able to give you that. You're not going to get that level of, the only word I can come up with is fulfillment. I would do it for free. I did it for free for a long time. I literally started doing these consults completely no cost to people. I did almost 60 consults when I first started this completely for free. And everybody's got to make a living. They've got to make money to be able to support their family and put food on the table and do what they need to do. We pay our employees well. But all that being said, you'll come to this too. Like, you'll make a bunch of money and you're like, awesome, made a bunch of money. I'm going to go travel for a little while. And then after a little while of traveling, you're going to be like, cool. So I went everywhere and I bought all the things I wanted and I feel empty. And I really don't know. I thought that was going to, it was going to be awesome. And it was, but like, now what? That's kind of where I think a lot of employees would end up being if they were to leave, is they would go do cool stuff and travel and buy all the stuff. And then they'd be like, man, I kind of wish, I hadn't left that job. I actually really enjoyed that. I got to help people, woke up happy every day. And like, I've worked at a lot of places and our employees are very important to me. I want to make sure that they don't have a glass ceiling, that they're always growing, that they're around other A players, that we do on-sites, that we do cool, team building events. There's just a lot of things I've learned from working other places where it sucked. And I want to make this a really awesome place to work at. Not to the detriment of the business, not like frivolous spending or anything too crazy, but like, you're happy to work here, and there's a lot of advantages outside of the pay. And like I said, the work that you're doing that you really enjoy. So we might have a couple people quit, but we have 100 people at this point. So I don't think that we're going to see just a huge amount of people leave. And they all rally too. Like, they're excited to work together in order to be able to meet the demand and serve our clients and make sure that people are having a good experience. So I would be surprised if we saw anybody quit, to be honest with you. Matthew says, Jake, I cannot thank you enough. God bless you and your family. God bless you, dude. Thank you. He says, thank you for having the courage to present on YouTube and help the community, and for changing my life. This is the cool kind of messages, man. This is why I do this stuff. So thank you so much for the super chat, the kind words. He says, thoughts on Harvard selling off their Bitcoin and selling off all their ETH? Thank you. This is really kind words and a really good question. Harvard is very smart. They have an endowment. They can invest a fairly decent portion of that into private equities and other higher risk investments, including cryptocurrency. And for them to sell off those positions, and the people that are involved or working there and knowing the connections that they might have, tells me, I don't know if it tells you, but it tells me that probably wouldn't be in those assets right now. Kevin O'Leary also just said the same thing. He's like, I don't think it's ETH. I don't think it's Bitcoin. It's going to be one of these other networks that they're going to tokenize the S&P on. So anyway, yeah. When you guys, come into tons of money, which you will if you're in crypto, and you can, tough it out and have the perseverance. One of the things that you might want to set up later on for if you set up a public charity like Harvard, is you could have an endowment. And inside of an endowment, it's very similar to an IRA or an insurance policy where it's tax-free for trading things inside that. So the endowment can, make a ton of money on startups or crypto or whatever it was. And when they sell it, they have no tax implications. They can just roll it into the next investment. So for them, whatever gains they made on Bitcoin and ETH, those were tax-free. And now they can go double down on AI or whatever else they're looking to invest in. We are almost at time. And I think I've made it through the majority of the super chats. If I miss your super chat tonight, please DM us on different social media platform, or just email it to info@digitalfamilyoffice.io. It's Teddy B4. He says, hi, Jake. Would you tell us the way to put XRP to use inside IRAs using ETFs with DWP versus direct XRP holdings in an IRA with Anchorage? So you can margin the ETF. You have to qualify to be able to do that. You have to work with a broker or prime broker or somebody else that's going to provide that liquidity for you. They're only going to give you like 50% LTV, probably less than that on a crypto ETF. So maybe you're getting 20, 30% LTV. And then, you're probably going to want to be doing something pretty low risk with that in case there's volatility in the market. You're probably not going to want to put it in anything that's not pretty liquid to be able to meet a capital call if there is volatility in XRP. So, probably laddered treasuries, something like that produces a 6 or 5% return on an annual basis. And, that's not going to be a ton of money. It's going to be like if your margin on your total ETF position is 50%, and you're putting, call it 25 or 30% into that market on the laddered treasury strategy, you're really only going to make like 2% on your ETF position as a total. But it's 2% cash flow that you didn't have. And it also depends on the debt service or the interest rate on the margin. So that would be the way that you do it. You wouldn't be able to run an options. Well, you could run an option strategy inside of an ETF to produce cash flow. I know a little birdie was talking about doing that type of stuff the other day when we were talking to him. So all that being said, maybe you want to work with dividend paying ETFs for the cash flow. But if you're looking to compound the XRP, really the only way to be able to do that is through the algorithmic trading strategy for the bearer asset that we do on our side of the fence. It'd be difficult to do that with an ETF. I'm sure that there's probably somebody out there that's built an algorithmic trading strategy for the levered ETF. Because that would be a really good way to be able to do that, is inside of an IRA, a Roth IRA or a traditional IRA where there's no tax implications or they're deferred. And that way you could trade that levered XRP ETF and get, some more volatility out of it. And then you could kind of double the gains that you would get from just trading the underlying asset itself. So I don't know if anybody's built that algorithmic trading strategy out to be able to take advantage of that inside of that wrapper. But that would be the way that you would do it. JD says, I'm under the 50,000 XRP, have an LLC through DAG, Living Trust. Is there something planned for custodian protection with your company while we wait for price appreciation? The DAG app is the best I have at this time. Uphold does use a Fireblocks instance. We have purview over that. So they are technically the custodian. We use a lot of their licenses in order to be able to facilitate that. But that would be, if you don't want to hold it on a cold wallet and you want to be in our ecosystem where we have purview and can build out some, multi-sig and other stuff over the long term, that would be my suggestion. So yeah, up to you. Unfortunately, I don't have a better solution than that in the short term until we do see price appreciation, and then everybody will be able to, get into actual institutional custody over there with Anchorage and DWP. Marty Gilman says, Jake, the great. Thanks, dude. What are your thoughts on Jed McCaleb liquidating so much XRP post his departure from Ripple and the recent DTCC and stellar news? I hope God continues to bless you and your family. God bless you, man. Thank you. So I can talk about this now because we're no longer raising capital for it. But we had a private investment that we put in Vast. So Jed McCaleb used all the money that he got off of his XRP to start Vast. Vast is a space company. They are commercializing space stations. There's a ton of applications for that. I don't know what I can and can't share publicly, just because we did have an NDA and we're part of a specific meeting when they were raising capital for that. So I'm going to leave that opaque. But that's where all that money went. He sold off that XRP to start that space company. And they just raised their Series A, and that's the round that we got in on. And I think that may be their only round that they do. Maybe they'll do another one, but I think that they'll eventually go public or have a liquidity event that'll be pretty substantial. Already worth $2 billion, and they already have some pretty significant contracts with parties that you would know, which again, I don't know what I'm able to say publicly on that, but that's what he sold off the XRP to invest in and create, which Jed has done very, very well for himself. Marwana, I'm going to butcher that. I'm not even going to try the rest of it. They say, hey, Jake, social member, love the mastermind. Awesome dude. Joining the DAG family soon. Kathy Wood submitted an S1 on January 23rd of 2026 for an XRP ETF. Said 30 to 60 days. Do you know when that could happen? ARK is allocating 20%. I did not realize that. That would have been, we're way past that 30 to 60 day period. I would be willing to wager that there's going to be a bunch of ETFs, including that one, that I'll get passed about the same time for XRP when they need to funnel liquidity into it. We'll see if that's true or not, but that's my tinfoil hat. I'm going to grab these last three and then probably wrap it here. And I know there's some super chats I didn't get to that we will make sure that we get on Monday. What are your thoughts on Josh Nelson with his take on non-grantor irrevocable spendthrift discretionary trust and deferring taxes? Is this valid? I actually got to talk to Josh face-to-face at the XRP Vegas event. We had met one time previously on just Zoom. He had reached out. I think that what he has is great. I need to do some more vetting on it. He told me he was going to send me some stuff from his attorneys to review. I haven't seen that from him since that event. But if he wants to send that over, I'd love to advocate for it and be absolutely certain on it. Based on everything he told me, sounds great. There are a lot of sketchy people out there in the market. I do not think Josh is one of those people. I think he's got a really good product. I just want to better understand it before I give my stamp of approval. And again, he's got my email. So if you guys want to share this with him, if he'll send that stuff over, I'd love to review it with my attorneys, get mine and his attorneys on a call and make sure that it is as good as it looks like it is. So that's where I'm at with that. But great guy. I think he has super genuine. He wants to help people. I think his heart's in the right spot. And again, I think the product, based on everything I've seen, looks fantastic, but I got to get my attorneys to give me the golden stamp on it before I say, yes, that is exactly what you should do type stuff. Kingdom Within Me. Always love the name. They say, send some assets from my wallet to the bank account. Now, high quantum risk. Yeah, if you've exposed the outward key, it has a higher propensity to be hacked by a quantum wallet, according to David Schwartz, which again, I don't pretend to understand any of that stuff. I'm just learning from people that are smarter than me, which I consider David extremely intelligent. He says, if I send the remaining assets to brand new wallet, is brand new wallet a high quantum risk, or is quantum tracking assets from one? So they could track from the old one to the new one for sure. It's on a public blockchain. It would be difficult to do. But until that other key is exposed, they would have a difficult time because there would only be one endpoint that, to be able to define and figure out the code and be able to get in there. So it's when you've sent and received from the same wallet that it exposes it to that risk. If it's just been sent to, it should be pretty quantum resistant. Tim Jabu, excuse me, he says, hello, sir. If a item is tokenized and the token is $1 and the item is $1 million, it would take 1 million tokens. What if the value of the token or the item changed? Carbon One and DAG customer. So the example I could give you would be of tokenizing SPVs. So we're looking at that with Syndicately. We've talked about that a lot of times. The issuer of the tokens would define the number of tokens, very similar to like shares in a company. So if you had an NFT and you were to issue 1 million shards of the NFT, like you're talking about, where it's $1 million item and it's worth $1. If the item appreciated, each one of those subsidiary, each one of those fractions or tokens would also increase in the same value. So if the total value of the item went to 1.3 million, every token or shard of the NFT would then be worth $1.30 if it was divided by 1 million. So I think that's what you're asking. Hopefully that makes sense to you, and that's how that would work. We already did that one. I think I got through most of them. Let me double check something real quick before we sign off tonight. I don't want to get yelled at here. I don't see that I've got another DM on Discord, so I'm going to go ahead and wrap it. Thank you guys for taking time out of your Wednesday to come hang out with me. If you do want to work with us on the app side of things, to set up your LLC, maintain that, transfer it over from Laughlin or anything else, you can go to app.digitalascensiongroup.com. That's app.digitalascensiongroup.com. You can go to digitalfamilyoffice.io if you want the larger breadth of services that we have, trust and estate planning, taxes, which we don't file. We're not a tax preparer. We do not file taxes. We have partners that do that, but we do have that service on our website. Wealth management through digitalwealthpartners.net. And then, as always, we do have the Mastermind. If you want to join that, it is at beyondbroke.com. Use the code beyondbroke, all capitalized, #1. And then MO, like Mary Oscar, gets you the first month for $2. Come try it out. So with that, I'll wrap it. Hope you guys have a wonderful night, a wonderful week, and we'll see you on the next one.